Where does the creation of a great story begin?
I think it varies from story to story, from writer to writer. I've interviewed so many of them. Some of them start with a theme. I don't do that. A central theme of a story will emerge over time. But some people start off with a thematic point of view. A lot of people that I have interviewed, and this is more where I'm at, start off with a character or characters. And I think that works because if the character is interesting and you can mine that, then that's where people can find those points of connection. Some start off with a story concept. I do this thing on my blog. I've done it now 10 straight years, 10 years, called A Story Idea Each Day for a Month. So in every April, 30 days, I collect stories along the way in my computer, and then I just run one each day. And I say, okay, so here's the basis of this news article. What would we do with this if it were a movie? And get people to think about this. I'd say, what if we did this as a drama? Wait a minute, what if we did this as a thriller? What if you spun it this way? Like I just heard one on the way over. This is amazing. So a guy is at Dallas Love Field today, a passenger, waiting to take off, when there's this hubbub there. And as it turns out, they're bringing back the remains of a guy who fought for the United States in Vietnam. And they've recently discovered his remains. His son was 5 when he last saw his father at that base leaving to go to Vietnam. The pilot of the plane flying his father's remains to Dallas is his son. Is that amazing? So they had all of the people, like all those people who do the luggage, and they created these line, and they had they were doing a water tribute. They were shooting like fire hoses and stuff. They had military guys there. And the guy who said it was that everybody was pressed up against the windows because this word had spread that this was happening. And he said it was the eeriest thing. Nobody's phone, nobody talking, no click, 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 click of the luggage. Everybody just standing still, watching this reverent moment happen. So I'd say things like the news articles, I don't know if that's a great story or not, but it's a wonderful moment, but maybe that's an opportunity to be, a story. So I think it can happen from anywhere, be open to it. The magic words, what if, right? Mark Norman's son calls him up and says, what if Shakespeare had writer's block? And that was the inspiration for Shakespeare in Love. And Hook, written by James V. Hart, came about like a breakfast conversation where his son said, what if Peter Pan grew up? So I think concepts are big. I think they're really important now, maybe as important as they were the kind of high concept thing that we talked about in the 80s and 90s so much, because of this whole idea that unless you've got some sort of pre-existing IP, Hollywood's scared to greenlight that. So it takes a really, really strong concept, a strong story concept. So I'd say theme, characters, story concept. I mean, those are all, I love the Coen brothers. The way that Miller's Crossing started was this image of a hat being tossed across a creek in the woods. That was literally where that started. So whatever it is, find if you're passionate about it, and if you're passionate about it, then write the hell out of it,
I'm sorry, why have screenplays changed in terms of reading one, let's say from 20 years ago, from one 2 years ago, in terms of, are things written in a briefer manner? Or?
Yes. Now, this is where one area I feel pretty confident that I understand pretty well. I used to teach a class called The History of American Screenwriting, which was created by my colleague down at the University of North Carolina, Dana Cohen. And I taught that class, I think, 4 times. And it was really a brilliant class because it would go decade by decade, starting with like the 1890s. Every week was like a different decade, 1900s, 1910s, 1920s. And so you're studying the evolution of screenwriting and filmmaking, particularly in the United States, and the role of the screenwriter in the process, particularly in Hollywood. One of the things that we did in that class was we looked at screenplay structure and format and style as it evolved over time. In fact, the term screenplay didn't really come into existence until the 30s and 40s. Before then, it was known, well, it was basically just a shot list. And then it became known as a continuity during the silent film era. But then once talkies came along, then they started Hollywood started to bring all these playwrights to the dialogue, right? And so then it became a screenplay, 2 words. So if you look at movies from the 30s and even into the 40s, you'll oftentimes see that credit being screenplay, as a screen version of a play. So then eventually screenplays kind of became a little bit more of their own thing, and we joined them together as screenplay. So I've studied this quite, comprehensively, and I know for a fact that it's always evolving. So that always cracks me up when people say, well, you can't do this or you have to do that. It's always evolving. It's constantly evolving. So for example, if you look at scripts from, there were no things as selling scripts or spec scripts back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. It was all for hire, well, 40s and 50s, 30s, 40s and 50s. And so it was all these things were filled with shots, close up, zoom in, all that stuff. What happened once the spec script market evolved was directors said, well, we don't want it. We don't want you to tell us how to direct the movie. We're directors, we're gonna do that. So then we pulled out that, generally speaking, we pulled out that camera jargon and directing lingo. And so that led to the whole we see, we move, we hear. And then that started to get a bit tiresome. And so then what we started to do was just describe what's happening. And so then when I first broke in, it was like, okay, so every paragraph you should try to have no more than 5 lines, as opposed to like these big blocks of 15, 20, 30 lines, because it's much easier to read. Script readers are, in effect, the threshold guardians of Hollywood. And we try to make it as easy for them to read as possible. Nowadays, I think that, the general feeling, and this is not a rule, but the general feeling is that the paragraph should be no longer than 3 lines. But a better way to think about it is not like that sort of regimented thing. I think the better way to think about it is each line of scene description, each paragraph of scene description, that's a way of indicating a camera shot. You're not saying it's a camera shot, but if you think about the scene as you're writing it, and you're thinking, okay, that's a close-up, I see that as a close-up, and I see this as a wide shot, and I see this as a medium shot. Now, you're not saying that in the script, but you're breaking up each paragraph to suggest that that's a camera shot. That's a great way to not only direct the action on the page, but also ensure that your paragraphs aren't that long. You're breaking them up into 1, 2, or 3 lines. So scripts today, this is why it's important. Yeah, it's great to read the older scripts, but it's really important to read the scripts that come out nowadays because the styles are constantly changing. We're seeing something happening right now, and I don't know if it's going to continue to go this way, but including images in scripts. Like if you read the script that Brian Woods and Scott Beck did for A Quiet Place, it has an image of their Monopoly board. It's got an image comparing like the Statue of Liberty and I think the Eiffel Tower and then this big tower that's out in the field there, just so you get a sense of it. They change font sizes. They use, one page has like a word on it or even a letter, So it's much more visually graphic, and I guess it makes sense because movies are primarily a visual medium. Some people may resist that as being kind of a cheat, but we're starting to see some of that now. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong. It could be that we eventually, that's what screenplays become. They do include images. And you could certainly make an argument that why not? Because again, it's a visual medium. So it's constantly in a state of change, which is why if anybody tells you you can't do this or you have to do that, then you're not talking to the right people. You need to read scripts by professional screenwriters and see what they do and realize that we have a lot of latitude to tell the story the best way it needs to be told.
And maybe that's why emojis and different things have seeped into, I don't know if you've received papers that have like an emoji in them or here or there, but it's become part of communication, images, symbols.
You see them in scripts because of texting now. We didn't have texting, until 15 years ago or whatnot, right? So when you don't, some people, like university students, will try to do that as dialogue. I say, well, it's not really dialogue; it's its own thing. And so the typical thing now is to do left margin, just like you're doing action, right? And you do, the name of the character, colon, and then their little texting thing, and it can have an emoji in it. And then you do a shift enter. You don't do 2 lines, a line space. You do shift enter, so it's right under there, the next text, shift enter, the next text. And that's how most people that I know handle texting. But yeah, emojis would be there. We wouldn't, who knows, in 10 years we'll be doing something different, and that's going to be reflected in screenplays, yeah.
It's kind of matrix thing coming through the computer.
Yeah.